THQ Nordic released another Battle for Bikini Bottom style SpongeBob game. But what is it? Is this the Battle for Bikini Bottom sequel? And is it still fun for adults? Let's find out. Spongebob Squarepants Battle for Bikini Bottom is widely enjoyed by both kids and adult gamers, not only because of the nostalgia, but because it's just an overall great game with enough challenge to keep it engaging for older players. This January, we received what I can best describe as a follow-up in the form of Spongebob Squarepants The Cosmic Shake. Long story short, Cosmic Shake is not really a sequel. It has an entirely different story that has no relation to the story in Battle for Bikini Bottom. However, there's a lot of similar gameplay aspects, and that's what I really want to focus on today. We've still got the tikis and most of the same mechanics and playstyles. Even the jellyfish that you supposedly catch, even though it seems more like we're killing them.
Oh my god, she dead.
But it's still its own thing. So does it hold up to its predecessor? Can you still enjoy this game as an adult, or is it just something to buy for your kids? That's what I'm here to talk about. There will be some slight spoilers in the form of footage, as I'll be showing clips from all of the worlds of the game. Though I won't be showing any of the boss fights or vocalizing any major story spoilers, aside from the basic gist of it. So if you've not seen anything yet and would like to keep it that way, you can avoid the footage just by listening to the audio. So please feel free to do so. Now let's get into it. I definitely have a lot of nostalgia for SpongeBob in general, but I'll do my best to judge how fun it is for an older audience. For reference, I am years old, and I've been watching SpongeBob ever since it came out. I don't keep up with the new episodes very well, but I do go back on occasion and rewatch some of the older ones. So how is the story in this game? Well, it's not monumental. Granted, if I had to compare this game to any other major titles, I'd say it runs the likes of Mario, Pokemon, Crash Bandicoot, those kinds of games when it comes to story. Yeah, there is one, but it's going to be bare bones and not really a deal breaker about if the game is good or not. However, this game definitely has a significantly better story than Battle for Bikini Bottom, in my opinion. Basically, SpongeBob buys magic cosmic jelly from a sketchy mermaid that's supposed to grant wishes, but it ends up opening a bunch of cosmic rifts with alternate realities and sucking his friends inside while simultaneously destroying Bikini Bottom. The mermaid who sold you the jelly then says she'll help you, but you need to collect the jelly and bring it to her in order to access all of the portals. It's not a massively unique or intriguing story, but certainly beats most games in this genre, especially licensed games. The writing for this game is also significantly better than Battle for Bikini Bottom in my opinion. As an adult playing this game, the writing felt even less childish here. Battle for Bikini Bottom often didn't make sense to me, just like throwing in random dialogue lines that were just trying too hard to be funny, especially having SpongeBob talk in that superhero voice randomly and far too frequently. I think I maybe chuckled at one line of dialogue total in that entire game, which was at the very end, slight spoiler alert, SpongeBob says Sandy's right and Patrick goes, "I thought she was a squirrel." Other than that, I don't play Battle for Bikini Bottom for the dialogue, it's for the gameplay. But fast forward to Cosmic Shake, and I actually didn't mind it. I wasn't nearly as tempted to skip cutscenes or button mash through dialogue. I was actually curious what they had to say in this game, and got quite a few laughs. Sure, it still had its silly childish moments, the cringiest parts being when they would randomly show an up-close cartoon art of certain situations that was usually gross looking. Why they chose to do this, who knows. I know the show would sometimes do that, but it didn't feel like it fit here. Especially because it would be thrown into some dialogue, so you'd think the character was done talking, and then you get attacked with an image that you have to wait a second before you can even skip. It just felt out of place and unnecessary. But overall, the writing and dialogue in Cosmic Shake was improved over its predecessor in my opinion. But let's move on to the gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, the gameplay is similar in a lot of ways to Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is why I call it an almost borderline sequel. But it still has plenty of differences. The biggest one probably being that SpongeBob is the only playable character this time around. In Battle for Bikini Bottom, you could switch between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy in certain levels depending on what type of platforming the level called for, and each character had different mechanics. But in Cosmic Shake, SpongeBob is giving his own version of most of these mechanics, and I think it worked pretty well. SpongeBob can use a pizza box to glide, much like Sandy's lasso, and throw bubbles, much like Patrick's throw ability. And it works. The difficulty, though, is what really determines if this is a children's game or something anyone can enjoy. There is definitely a simplicity to this game. Most of my deaths were just from platforming errors. I like to explore, and that's one thing this game does really well, is hiding collectibles off screen or behind sensitive platforming segments that are easy to fall off of. Though falling does not kill you immediately, it does take an underwear off of your health, so if you fall too many times, you will eventually have to go back to the last checkpoint. But where the higher difficulty comes in is with the awards, which if playing on Xbox or PlayStation also doubles as achievements or trophies. Most of them are still pretty simple, yes, but the boss fight achievements are migraine-inducing. Most of them are just, don't die. which sounds easy enough, but not when they're spamming you with enemies the entire time. They also don't give you any quick restarts. You have to go back to the main menu to even reload your save and have the awards still unlock. So for achievement and trophy hunters, this certainly adds some challenging aspects to a somewhat easier game, or even just completionists for the Nintendo players. But even just in general, this game certainly has some challenging boss fights, though I promise no spoilers on bosses, so that's all I'm going to say about those. As far as levels in general, I'd say the difficulty is so-so. I've gotten whacked by enemies my fair share of times, but nothing crazy either. I wasn't bored from feeling like it was too easy, but I also never really struggled either, aside from the achievement hunting. Though I could see for a child this being really challenging. If I was 5, I'd be having a rough time. But for the kids, they also didn't implement a life system either. You have unlimited lives. If you lose all of your underwear, you just get sent back to the last checkpoint. And the checkpoints are pretty generous in this game. Also should specify that underwear is your health system in this game. I'd love to know what was going through the minds of anyone who's watching this that didn't know that. I swear my real underwear stayed on the whole time I was playing this game. Okay, well, most of the time. But now let's talk about the design of this game. For the most part, this game is visually appealing. Lots of bright colors, and honestly, I enjoy the level designs even better than Battle for Bikini Bottom. There's so much more variety than just, oh, here's Bikini Bottom, now here's Goo Lagoon, and here's Rock Bottom. They put a nice spin on every location in this game. If you're watching the footage, then you've already seen what I'm talking about, but for those who are just listening, here's another brief spoiler warning. Just skip ahead like 10 seconds if you want to skip it. But in this game, we get Halloween Rock Bottom. Downtown is a movie set. We get a prehistoric for one level. It's just expanding on the locations so much more and making it that much more interesting. In Battle for Bikini Bottom, it's just your standard SpongeBob locations with just a few little changes here and there. But in Cosmic Shake, everything has a new touch on it, and in a way that really changes it up. But let's talk the technical stuff for just a second and how the game runs. I was disappointed when purchasing the game to find out that it was released on last-gen consoles. Well, except Nintendo. Who knows when that's being upgraded.
That's okay, take your time.
But yes, this game is only available on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One with no ports for the PS5 or Series X. I mean, it is a cartoon game. It doesn't need to use every inch of the capabilities to run. It's going to be somewhat basic in design, so I guess that's okay, except it weirdly wasn't. I'm playing on a Series X, and there were various parts of the game that had significant frame rate drops, most notably at the red carpet portion on the second level, and anytime SpongeBob slingshots long distances. Now, I'm not here to start any console war conversation. I'm a multi-console gamer, but I just know some PlayStation diehard is gonna comment, "Yeah, 'cause you played on Xbox!" But let's play along for a second and say that the PS5 would have performed better. A good comparison here is Crash Bandicoot 4, which is probably equally, if not even more detailed than this game, and it plays on my Series X at a perfect 60 frames per second with no drops. So I can only say it's safe to assume that it's not a console problem but a design problem. Though these are all minor issues and did not make the game unplayable by any means. Well, I mean, I know there's people out there who are like, anything not 4K 60 FPS looks like garbage! But let's assume you're not one of those people, then this game is perfectly fine. And I hope that sales do well enough that THQ Nordic gets the green light to do another game like this, and maybe we will get it on a current gen console with the glorious 60 FPS 4K visuals, but again, this game is fine. But back to level design. Every level is different, and slight spoiler, but even the hub world changes as you progress farther in the game. It has some fun designs, and they are all different enough to keep it interesting. And now let's talk about fan service for a second, because this is a major franchise and a television show after all. Sure, this game can still be fun for those who have never seen the show, aside from maybe bits and pieces or memes online, but if you're a fan of SpongeBob, especially OG SpongeBob, they pack this game full of references. The biggest one being the costumes. You can unlock tons of different costumes to wear as you play, in the form of skins. There are some you unlock with the story as you play, others are unlocked through collectibles and purchasing them with your jelly. There's even a handful that you can purchase with real money as a DLC. Almost anything you can think of SpongeBob wearing in an episode is in this game. There are throwbacks galore. I don't want to say too much more as far as other references go, because they are much more fun to find as you play the game, but they were clearly putting a lot of effort into giving us early SpongeBob fans a nostalgia trip. So if it's not obvious at this point, I love this game. I think it was a great game to release following the Battle for Bikini Bottom remaster. However, it definitely is not a sequel. If anything, it's more of a new entry in this game universe, which is hard to really call it a game universe since SpongeBob is a television show and there were technically a ton ton of games in between Battle for Bikini Bottom and Cosmic Shake. But let's go along with the thought process that Battle for Bikini Bottom was the previous entry in the form of the Rehydrated version, of course, but you know what I mean. I know some people have complained about the similarities, but I truly enjoyed it and would love to see more. Over the last month or so, I've completed both games, and I'm craving even more. And these weren't short games either, at least when comparing them to other licensed games. But I'd be interested to see what else he can come up with for maybe another future title in this style. It truly was a great 3D platformer, and it can be good for all ages. Adults probably will enjoy it much more if they're a SpongeBob fan, especially with all these references, but SpongeBob fan or not, if you're just looking for a good 3D platformer to play casually, add this one to your list. And that's all I have to say for right now about the game. It's awesome, I loved it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to like, comment, share. If you want to help support this channel and help me live my dreams of making content for a living, you can support on my Patreon, as well as follow me on Twitter. All of this stuff is in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.